Hello, I'm Rebecca Camp, and I'll be moderating the debate for our group, Empowerment versus Care. As I introduce each of the team members, if each of you wouldn't mind raising your hand to acknowledge your presence. Each member of the debate teams will represent a role in the life of an individual in a specific scenario explained after introductions. For the defense of the empowerment, we have Reagan Baker, who will represent BCBA point of view regarding empowerment. Isabel Merrick, who is representing a parent defending empowerment. For the defensive care, we have Brittany Bales, representing a grandparent's role for the individual approaching transition, and Miranda Scott, who will also represent defense of the care from the perspective of a special education teacher. We will be using a scenario for this debate. An 18-year-old male's exit conference from high school. He is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and moderate cognitive disability. Separate views will be presented from each individual involved in the stakeholder process. To begin, we need to discuss some terminology used during the debate that was defined by the debate group prior to creating each side's argument. Empowerment is defined by the degree of autonomy and self-determination in people and communities in order to enable them to represent their interests. Care is referred to the provision of what is necessary for the health, welfare, maintenance, and protection of someone. We will define transitioning for disabled individuals as the time in which adolescents are exiting school. The aspiration for independence in individuals with disability is no different than their non-disabled peer. It includes all aspects of the adolescent life. Some core principles we will be addressing are respecting autonomy, which refers to promoting self-sufficiency to the furthest extent without placing the individual in harm. Also, benefiting others is another core principle referring to acknowledging your work as solely based on the benefit of each client. According dignity, which means that each individual is equally respected, independent of functional or cognitive level. The Behavior Analyst Certification Board, or BACB, outlines specific codes associated with these ethical concerns. 4 codes that will be touched on throughout the debate will be codes 2.05, A, the rights of the client are paramount and behavior analysts support clients' legal rights and prerogatives. This code essentially addresses that the role of a behavior analyst includes being held accountable for supporting every individual under the law. 2.09a and 2.09b, clients have a right to effective treatment, i.e. based on the research literature and adapted to the individual client. Behavior analysts always have the obligation to advocate for and educate the client about scientifically supported, most effective treatment procedures. Effective treatment procedures have been validated as having both long-term and short-term benefits to clients and society. Part B addresses behavior analysts have the responsibility to advocate for the appropriate amount and level of service provision and oversight required to meet the defined behavior change program goals. 4.09 is also addressed. Least restrictive procedures. Behavior analysts review and appraise the restrictiveness of procedures and always recommend the least restrictive procedures likely to be effective. Basically, all behavior analysts are required to ensure that all measures are taking place to place the individual in a treatment which is least restrictive yet effective. Transitioning from secondary education to independent living can be a daunting task. For these individuals with disabilities, the transition period begins by age 14 and determines whether individuals are able to live independently, as often in the hands of the caregiver or support team. With a core ethical principle of respect for autonomy in mind, this debate will argue both sides of empowerment versus care as we investigate the line between empowering independence and supported care for individuals with disabilities. Why is transition so important? Well, according to Byrne, Wolfberg, and Gray, 2014, during the transition period, adolescents learn various techniques, attractions, and strong points through their relationships with important figures in their lives. For individuals with disabilities, this process of gaining autonomy may be quite difficult. This presents some ethical concerns regarding the future of these individuals and who will make decisions in post-secondary society. So here we address the ethical dilemma concerning the future of the individuals. Who makes these choices for individuals with special needs? For individuals with disabilities, transitioning to adult living often involves a team of support staff and caregivers working together to devise a plan for the future. Where is the line between encouraging self-determined decision-making and living and enabling a supported lifestyle? For individuals with disabilities, this transition period legally begins by the age of 14 And whether or not these individuals are able to live independently is often in the hands of the caregiver or support team. With a core ethical principle of respect for autonomy in mind, this debate will argue both sides of empowerment versus care as we investigate the line between empowering independence and supportive care for individuals with disabilities transitioning to adulthood. Our first debate question will be, should someone with low-functioning ASD, autism spectrum disorder, be able to make decisions for themselves in regard to their transition? Reagan, you're representing the role of the BCBA involved in this transition placement during this scenario. You will now have the floor to provide your answer.
Thank you, Rebecca. So in my opinion, individuals with autism are definitely capable of making decisions for themselves. While they may need training or assistance in how to make more critical decisions that could cause them harm, these individuals are still definitely capable of making more decisions than they're typically given the opportunity to make. Many times the decisions that parents and others, significant others, make for young adults don't align with what the young adult would actually choose for themselves. For example, in an article by Martin et al., the authors compared parental decisions on vocational or job placement with their child's decision on the job placement. In this study, not all of the children were able to directly say where they would like to work. And I want to point out that in this case, they were still given the option to make a decision. This was done by modifying the choices and assessments used. So this looked like taking their preferences of activities into consideration and giving them different choices between job-related tasks and evaluating which task they chose in each presentation. The authors found that the vast majority of the time, the parents did not accurately predict what their child would have chosen in regards to a vocational or job placement. Making decisions for the young adult can affect the young adult's quality of life, and that they may not be enjoying their day-to-day life if they're in a job that they're not satisfied with. Therefore, we really need to allow them to make these decisions so they can be more independent and be able to enjoy what they're doing every day. In addition, Martin et al. Also explained that individuals are often a lot more motivated and more successful if they're working on something they prefer to do instead of something they've been told they're going to do. According to Compliance Code 2.09, I, as a behavior analyst, must provide services that are based on research and will be effective for my clients. Because research shows that many individuals are capable of making decisions regarding their transition and job placement with little support, I must advocate for allowing these individuals to make vocational decisions, as well as other decisions in the transition process. With that said, I'm not advocating that we remove all supports and allow them to make this decision completely on their own. I believe that we need to be sure they're well informed and they have practice in making decisions like this so that they can make an informed and responsible decision. In an article by Wayman et al., authors discuss different factors leading to successful transition from high school, especially in regards to employment. They found that employment training and experience made a huge difference in the success of individuals in their study. Currently, according to a document titled Transition Experiences of People with Disabilities, just under 40% of individuals with disabilities are enrolled in vocational training programs in high school. So, according to the study, this is exactly what these individuals need to prepare them for the transition process. So if we could increase the percentage of individuals receiving these courses, we could increase their ability and the number of people able to make decisions and be prepared to go into the workforce with less support from other individuals. So if we allow our client to choose his area of interest for work, we can then find ways to help train him for different situations and tasks that he will encounter at work. So this still allows him to make the vocational choice himself, but we're also providing the supports he needs to be successful in that decision. According to Ethical Code 4.02, I must involve the client in planning programs, and they need to provide consent to the extent possible. Of course, if they're under 18, parental consent must be obtained as well. This code is really important in situations like this because if the client is involved in the planning of a program to help them be more successful during the transition, a lot of times they will be more motivated to participate in that program and be more willing to follow through with it. So, for example, we could develop a program working on specific work skills that are of more interest for the client and would be applicable to a job they're interested in. So, in conclusion, if we're allowing our clients to make decisions regarding their transition process and employment, many times their quality of life will be increased because they'll enjoy working, which is a huge part of adult life, and they will have more motivation to do things because they know that the choice was more theirs instead of something they were told to do. So I would argue that we need to allow these individuals to make decisions on their own to the extent possible, but with that said, still provide enough support to make sure the decisions will keep them safe and not put them in harm's way.
Thank you. Brittany, as a representative of the individual's family as his grandmother, what are your concerns?
Thank you, and thank you, Reagan, but I do have some concerns that I would like to share. As a grandparent, my main concern is for the welfare of my grandson, obviously. I understand that there are individuals such as yourself who are great service providers and follow an ethical code, but there are also people in the service industry who have bad intentions. Federal law mandates that transition planning has to occur and that stakeholders need to be involved. IDEA 2004 says transition planning must occur and defines transition services as a coordinated set of activities that are designed to facilitate movement of a child with a disability from school to employment. So that means to me that lots of stakeholders need to be involved in this decision-making process. He needs the care and support of his family. That's not to say that we don't still encourage him to be as independent as possible, but we want him to have, as you said, all the information available to make an informed decision. It's so easy for people with disabilities to be taken advantage of. We see it all the time in public school. Like you said in Compliance Code 2.09, you will give him effective treatment, but what about other public service providers? What about other post-secondary programs and employment services where they don't abide by your ethical code? I would like to share with you a video that talks about a child who was taken advantage of in his public school, just to give you an idea of how easily individuals with autism can be mistreated.
For severely disabled children.
There was a couple of times that he didn't want to get on the bus and he fought us, didn't want to get dressed, and we didn't know. I mean, honestly didn't know.
What his father didn't know would eventually come to him in an anonymous letter. He says the letter indicated Austin's special education teacher was physically and verbally abusing him.
When a child like him is being abused in some shape or form, that he can't, they can't come and tell you. To me, that makes it worse.
Police documents that 41 Action News obtained show that it was reported to the principal that Austin's teacher, Janet Williams, tried to kick him when he was under a table and allegedly called him an idiot. One witness said the teacher slapped him on the back of the head and called him another inappropriate name. According to the probable cause statement, the teacher admitted to hitting him at least 5 times.
And when I first got that police report and read through it, I mean, I could even read the whole thing.
Austin's family hired an attorney and filed a civil lawsuit.
What's really difficult is proving it. And the reason it is because you have these children who are, in many cases, nonverbal, like this little boy. He can't talk. And they can't tell their story.
Samara Klein has taken up special education cases for the last 20 years.
So in watching that little video clip, you can see why I might be inclined to keep a closer eye on the people involved in my grandson's care. In addition to caring for him by assisting in his decision making, there are lots of other challenges that he could face after he graduates high school. For example, according to the Government Accounting Office report released in 2012, some challenges accessing federally funded adult services might be delays in services, limited access to those services, a lack of information or preparedness by the family. There's a possibility that he would have to go onto a waiting list for these waiver services that are available to him after high school, in which time my grandson could potentially be without care. And then who will take care of him? That would fall on the shoulders of his family. According to Fraser and Mitchell in 2012, support's an essential component of an informed decision-making process. And Coker, Bryant, Bassett, and Webb said when secondary students with disabilities exit secondary education, they must rely on adult service agencies to continue providing the services they need to support employment or post-secondary education. Services provided to them through adult agencies aren't entitlements like they are in high school. These agencies have various eligibility requirements and possible waiting lists. Again, if he's waiting for services, who will care for him then? In closing, I want to share with you some statistics from the National Longitudinal Transition Study. So if you look here, you can see that less than 40% of individuals with disabilities have the independent living skills they need even 3 to 5 years out of high school. And you can also note that 60%, less than 60%, actually gain competitive employment. So I hope looking at these things and listening to some of my concerns will give you some things to think about when you're planning the transition for my grandson.
Thank you, Brittany. This brings us to our the other side, which would be both sides presented actually valid points and are easily defensible. And thank you, guys. This comes to our next important question. It's going to be argued by both Isabel Merrick and Miranda Scott. And the second important question to be debated will be, should individuals with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, be eligible for competitive employment? First, we'll hear from Isabel with the perspective of the individual's mother.
Kind of bothers me that this is even a question, because individuals with disabilities are absolutely entitled to employment and capable of receiving competitive employment regardless of their disability. When you look at an individual with special needs, don't look at them for their disabilities. Rather see their abilities, what they can do. From my perspective as a parent, I never want to think of what my son can't do. Instead, I try to figure out every way possible that he can do something. I strive to empower him to reach his goals, to be a contributing member to society, because that's what we all want, to be included. I want to share a video with you about a young lady named Jessica. Jessica is a mentally challenged individual who is completely blind and has some speech and language impairments. Most would think that someone with these disabilities would never be able to work independently, especially in a factory setting. But her parents saw otherwise, so let's check out this video.
When they started talking about coming to Acadia, that was like a whole different environment.
She was going to be by herself without ARC personnel on site.
And she was like farther away from us, and she was in a factory environment, which at first that was kind of scary.
Not only for her safety, but not only for her physical safety, but personal safety, because she can't protect herself from anything bad that's happening to her. But you've got to, as a parents, you've got to prepare that individual for what's going to happen when you're gone. Not only do you have to prepare them and make sure that there are processes in place to help them through their own life, but that they're going to grow from the experience. They're going to be happier. They're going to be more socialized. They're going to be able to handle their disability better because of the exposure they're getting to the rest of the world. So if parents don't allow their children to do this, then you're not preparing your child for the future, and you're not giving the child the experiences they need to overcome their disability, and you're not contributing to the happiness of your child. So holding back and not allowing this to happen is a big mistake. I think employers can do this. The benefit to the employer is it's very difficult to find reliable employees to work in this environment. But if you work with folks with disability, reliability factor is 100%. You never have to worry about that. The training sticks, and they're always here to work. So so I think employers have found out that the folks with disabilities are some of the best employees they can hire. They're reliable. They're there on time. There's no other health issues. There's no drug issues that they have to deal with, and so this is another reason why they're encouraged to look at folks with disabilities, because they're the best employees.
She doesn't even realize what a good employee she is. She's happy. She's about as independent as she can get for her disability.
She's been recognized at ARC, for she got the Employee of the Year at ARC, so we're quite proud of her.
So Jessica's dad made some great points in this clip. My favorite was when he said, prepare that individual for what's going to happen when you're gone. This is something that's really important to consider, because being a parent, we must accept that more than likely our children will outlive us, and we're not always going to be around to care for them. So the best thing we can do for our children is to teach them how to care for themselves, to empower them to be independent. And if independence truly isn't an option, maybe their skill deficits are restricting them from being able to live safely on their own, that's okay. It doesn't have to be the end. Teach them how to be a self-advocate, to speak up for themselves, and to live the life that they want to live. I may just be a parent, but I like to think of myself as an equal member on my son's support team, so I familiarized myself with the professional and ethical compliance codes of the BACB. And I think a key code that we need to consider here is code 2.05a, that the rights of the client are paramount and behavior analysts support clients' legal rights and prerogatives. We need to remember that there are no special laws that say that individuals with disabilities are entitled to work. However, the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination of qualified employees based on their disability. As long as the individual is qualified to perform the act, they are absolutely entitled to the position. However, this is not always the case. Jessica's dad made another great point that all employers should consider. When hiring an individual with disabilities, the reliability factor is 100%. For these guys, their job is their life. They are some of the most dedicated employees out there, and forgive me if I'm a little biased. When it comes down to it, individuals with disabilities are entitled to the same opportunities that their typically developing peers have, and employment rights just shouldn't even be a question.
Thank you, Isabel. Now we're going to go to Miranda. We're going to hear from Miranda, who will be advocating from the perspective of the special education teacher.
Thank you, Rebecca. Ms. Merritt, I understand that you feel that those with ASD should be given the freedom to choose whether they want to enter the workforce or not. However, due to the several impairments that this young man has, I truly believe that he's not ready to enter the competitive employment. One of the major symptoms that your son shows is nonverbal social communication impairments. According to Gobick, Server, Katz, Shove, and Wiseman, 2012, individuals with ASD tend to have problems looking in the eyes of others and lack skills of interpreting the actions of others. Thus, your son may not be able to understand the various social behaviors that his coworkers may show. For instance, say one of his coworkers become upset at a remark that he has made, or his boss gets angry because he has not finished an assignment task. Your son may not detect that the coworker or neither the boss are angry. This could potentially lead to an argument between the coworker and or the boss and your son. In addition, your son tends not to show any emotion through his facial expression. So he might not smile when some of his coworkers speak to him. Many people find this behavior as being rude. Another factor that can inhibit your son from working successfully in competitive employment is bullying in the workplace. In a study conducted by Biska and Sharpley 2014, they revealed that individuals with ASD were prime targets for being bullied because they failed to be in the popular cliques. Thus, if your son tends to isolate himself at the workplace, he may be subject to harsh comments from his coworkers. In my opinion, this may cause him to retaliate and fight against the coworkers. Two of the most important reasons, I think, why this young man shouldn't be given competitive employment is because of his deficits in social processing and executive functioning. According to Barron, Wolfburn, and Gray 2014, and Wingham, ETAL 2014, individuals with ASD may either easily detect environmental situations or barely detect them at all. These impairments can truly be detrimental to their work performance. Since your son has the ability to detect and notice all of the stimulus around him, he may easily get distracted by the smell of someone's perfume, one of his coworkers' perfume, or he may get irritated from the different sounds that occur throughout the workplace. Also, he may feel upset or feel the need to react if a coworker accidentally touches him. Byrne, Wilburn, and Gray said that these individuals with ASD may react aggressively because of sensory overload, or they might not be able to finish their work. This could happen with your son. This brings me to the second point. Since your son has problems with his executive functioning, he may not be able to manage time wisely. According to Debbie Tantum's book called Autism Spectrum Disorder Through the Lifespan, this impairment that your son has may cause him to make irresponsible decisions, such as playing video games all night without thinking that he has to get up in time for work. Also, executive functioning disorder may cause him not to multitask very well on the job. Overall, the various defects that this student has may potentially interfere with his work performance. Thus, I feel that he should not be able to work in a competitive work environment.
Thank you, Miranda. Overall, the transition process is not one event. It is a process. Porter, Freeman, and Griffin references. It is evident that they are going to need some form of assistance, but to a certain extent. Nonetheless, individuals with ASD want to be able to make decisions about their transition process and gain competitive employment like everyone else, but there may be several barriers that prevent them from achieving this level of self-reliance. With a well-aligned transition service plan and motivation and support from all the stakeholders involved in his life, he will be able to make certain decisions on his own. Likewise, with several accommodations in the workplace, individuals with ASD should be able to work effectively in the competitive job environment. Ultimately, our group agrees with the stance that empowering an individual with disabilities with appropriate supports and accommodations provides the environment for the most successful outcome. And now I will go to some questions that we have for the audience. Okay, so we're going to look at how can empowerment be dangerous? I will let you guys have the floor to discuss.
I'd love to answer that question. I'm all for empowerment, but I think we need to make sure that we're empowering our children to work within their means. If we are empowering somebody to do something that they're physically not capable to do, then obviously that's going to be putting them at risk. So if somebody has difficulties with sensory processing and you're empowering them to cook dinner on a stove, they might touch the stove and burn themselves because they don't know that that's hot. So when we think about empowering, what we really need to do, the goal isn't necessarily just living independently, but it's teaching these individuals the skills that they need to be the most successful and work towards the goal of maybe living independently. We just need to make sure that we're not pushing anybody to do something that they're physically not capable of doing, which is when empowering somebody could be potentially dangerous.
Does anybody else have anything to say according to that question? Okay, we'll move on to the next question then, and this is from the perspective of the parent. How can I ensure that the system of supports established in the school continues after school, but does not impede my child's empowerment? And you guys can have the floor to answer.
I would love to answer this question, and I think it's an excellent question. So, as sorry, I lost my train of thought. So, as a behavior analyst, I focus a lot on parent training as well, and would love to work with you to train you on some of the things we've been working with your child, so that way once he transitions out of high school, you're able to still implement some of the same things we've been working on here in school. And I think that's extremely important. That consistency and just continued practice of those skills will really help him to be successful. Also, there's companies out there such as the ARC who provide excellent resources for families of individuals with disabilities that can really get you different support you may need for continuing different services and supports for your child. Also, depending on what's available in your area and different insurances, some services such as behavior analysis can be continued further, which will still provide that system of support for your child. Although that's very dependent on each state and each insurance. So that is something that we could look into together, for sure. But there are definitely a lot of different options out there to ensure your son is getting the support he needs. And as far as it not impeding his empowerment, as I said before, our goal in behavior analysis is to empower your child, give him the skills he needs to be able to do all this on his own. So our training will really focus on giving him those skills instead of making the decisions for him. And different companies like the ARC tend to think along the same lines as well. So I hope that helps.
All right, would anybody else like to comment on the question? Okie dokie, we'll move along then. We are going to now talk about, from the parent perspective again, or guardian, we're going to talk about, am I not able to make decisions after my child leaves high school? Basically in format of he has a disability and needs me to take care of him. This is addressing guardianship. What are your thoughts?
I'll take that one. Good question. Oftentimes, this comes up in a case conference. Parents aren't aware that when their son or daughter turns 18, that they can no longer make these decisions for them. So guardianship becomes an important piece of empowering the child, just to make sure that if they aren't able to make an informed decision alone, that you do have that guardianship. And this is a lengthy legal process that should start before the child's 18, especially if they're approaching exiting high school. I think, too, there are other options. You can have limited guardianship. So if the child can make some decisions, maybe you only have guardianship over the child's finances and or medical needs. So I think it's important to look at all the options, but I do think guardianship is a really good option if you're concerned about the child making their own decisions once they turn 18.
All right. We also want to ask about how can parents help their child during the transition process? Who would like to answer this question?
I would most definitely like to answer this question. Parents can help out in many ways. Parents can help their child increase their self-esteem by encouraging them to pursue a career or do things that they really like. Parents can also collaborate with school staff or college, also vocational rehabilitation counselors, to create a good educational plan that will help the teen gain success in their career. Also, a major important factor with disabled kids is once they graduate, they tend to not be in contact with their friends that they had in class. So in order for a parent to help them be more sociable, which is a deficit that they have, I think the parents should try to reach out to the other kids that's in the class, help them gain the numbers or internet access to trying to see if they could talk to their friends. This could help them overcome that barrier of being isolated.
All right. Thanks, Miranda. Does anybody have any questions or comments? All righty. Well, it sounds like if nobody has anything else to contribute or any questions or comments, we should be finished with our debate. And thank you very much for participating.